When a country is subjugated by an undesirable government, persons and parties undergo severe penances and austerities to get control of the government. And when they attain control, they flourish by giving themselves generous salaries. This temporary profit is like the flourishing of the earth in the rainy season. Actually, one should undergo severe austerities and penances only to achieve spiritual happiness. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that tapasya or austerity should be accepted for realizing the Supreme Lord. By accepting austerity in devotional service, one regains his spiritual life, and as soon as one regains his spiritual life, he enjoys unlimited spiritual bliss. But if someone undertakes austerities and penances for some material gain, it is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that the results are temporary and that they are desired by persons of less intelligence. During the rainy season, in the evening, there are many glowworms visible about the tops of the trees, hither and thither, and they glitter just like lights. But the luminaries of the sky, the stars, and the moon are not visible. Similarly, in the age of Kali, persons who are atheists or miscreants become very prominently visible, whereas persons who are actually following the Vedic principles for spiritual emancipation are practically obscured. This age, Kali Yuga, is compared to the cloudy season of the living entities. In this age, real knowledge is covered by the influence of the material advancement of civilization. The cheap mental speculators, atheists, and manufacturers of so called religious principles become prominent like the glowworms, whereas persons strictly following the Vedic principles or scriptural injunctions become covered by the clouds of this age. People should learn to take advantage of the actual luminaries of the sky, the sun, moon, and stars, instead of the glowworm's light. Actually, the glowworms cannot give any light in the darkness of night, as clouds sometimes clear, even in the rainy season, and sometimes the moon, stars, and sun become visible. So, even in this Kali Yuga, there are sometimes advantages. For example, sometimes Lord Chaitanya's Vedic movement of distributing the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is heard. People seriously eager to find real light should take advantage of this movement instead of looking toward the light of mental speculators and atheists. After the first rainfall, when there is a thundering sound in the clouds, all the frogs begin to croak, like students suddenly engaged in reading their studies. Students are generally supposed to rise early in the morning. They do not usually arise of their own accord, however, but only when there is a bell sounded in the temple or other spiritual institution. By the order of the spiritual master, they immediately rise, and after finishing their morning duties, they sit down to study the Vedas or chant Vedic mantras. Everyone is sleeping in the darkness of Kali Yuga, but when there is a great Acharya, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas to acquire actual knowledge. During the rainy season, many small ponds, lakes, and rivulets become filled with water. Otherwise, the rest of the year they remain dry. Similarly, materialistic persons are dry, but sometimes when they are in a so called opulent position, with a home or children or little bank balance, they appear to be flourishing. But immediately afterwards, they become dry again, like the small rivulets and ponds. The poet Vidyapati said that in the society of friends, family, children, wife, etc., there is certainly some pleasure, but that pleasure is compared to a drop of water in the desert. Everyone is hankering after happiness, just as in the desert everyone is hankering after water. If in the desert there is a drop of water, it may of course be said that water is there, but the benefit from that drop of water is very insignificant. In our materialistic way of life, which is just like a desert, we are hankering after an ocean of happiness, but in the form of society, friends, and mundane love, we are getting no more than a drop of water. Our satisfaction is never achieved, as the small rivulets, lakes, and ponds are never filled with water in the dry season. Due to rainfall, the grass, trees, and other vegetation look very green. Sometimes the grass is covered by a certain kind of red insect, and when the green and red combine with the umbrella like mushrooms, the entire scene changes, just like a person who has suddenly become rich. The farmer then becomes very happy to see his field full of grain. But the capitalists, who are always unaware of the activities of a supernatural power, become unhappy because they are afraid of a competitive price due to abundant production. In some places, certain capitalists in government restrict the farmers' production of grain, not knowing the actual fact that all food grains are supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the Vedic injunction, Eka Namyo Vidadhatikman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains this creation. Therefore, he arranges for a supply of whatever is required for all living entities. When there is a population increase, it is the business of the Supreme Lord to feed the people. But atheists and miscreants do not like abundant production of food, grains, especially if their business might be hampered. During the raining season, all living entities in the land, sky, and water become very much refreshed, exactly like one who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. We have practical experience of this with our students in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Before becoming students, they were dirty looking, although they had naturally beautiful personal features. Due to having no information of Krishna consciousness, they appeared very dirty and wretched. Since they have taken to Krishna consciousness, their health has improved, and by their following the rules and regulations, their bodily lustre has increased. When they are dressed with saffron colored cloth, with tilak on their foreheads, and beads in their hands and on their necks, they look exactly as if they have come directly from Vaikuntha. In the rainy season, when the rivers swell and rush to the oceans and seas, they appear to agitate the ocean. Similarly, if a person who is engaged in the mystic yoga process is not very much advanced in spiritual life, he can become agitated by the sex impulse. Although during the rainy season the high mountains are splashed by torrents of rain, they do not change. Similarly, a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness, even if put into difficulties, is not embarrassed. A person who is spiritually advanced accepts any adverse condition of life as the mercy of the Lord, and thus he is completely eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom. In the rainy season, some of the roads are not frequently used, and they become covered with long grasses. These roads are exactly like a Brahmin who is not accustomed to studying and practicing the reformatory methods of the Vedic injunctions. He becomes covered with the long grasses of Maya. In that condition, forgetful of his constitutional nature, he forgets his position of eternal servitorship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By being deviated by the seasonal overgrowth of long grasses created by Maya, a person identifies himself with the Mayic production and succumbs to illusion, forgetting his spiritual life. During the rainy season, lightning appears in one group of the clouds and then immediately in another group of clouds. This phenomenon is compared to a lusty woman who does not fix her mind on one man. A cloud is compared to a qualified person because it pours rain and gives sustenance to many people. A man who is qualified similarly gives sustenance to many living creatures, such as family members or many workers in a business. Unfortunately, his whole life can be disturbed by a wife who divorces him. When the husband is disturbed, the whole family is ruined, the children are dispersed, or the business is closed, and everything is affected. It is therefore recommended that a woman desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness live peacefully with her husband, and that the couple not separate under any condition. The husband and wife should not the husband and wife should control sex indulgence and concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness so their life may be successful. After all, in the material world, a man requires a woman and a woman requires a man. When they are combined, they should live peacefully in Krishna consciousness and should not be restless like the lightning flashing from one group of clouds to another. Sometimes, in addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds, there is an appearance of a rainbow, which stands as a bow without a string. Actually, a bow is the curved position because it is tied at its two ends by the bowstring. But in the rainbow, there is no such string, and yet it rests in the sky so beautifully. Similarly, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to this material world, he appears just like an ordinary human being, but he is not resting on any material condition. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says that he appears by his internal potency, which is free from the bondage of the external potency. What is bondage for the ordinary creature is freedom for the personality of Godhead. In the rainy season, the moonlight is covered by clouds, but is visible at intervals. It sometimes appears that the moon is moving with the movement of the clouds, but actually the moon is still. Due to the clouds, it also appears to move. Similarly, for one who has identified himself with the moving material world, his actual spiritual luster is covered by illusion, and with the movement of material activities, he thinks that he is moving through different spheres of life. This is due to false ego, which is a demarcation between spiritual and material existence, just as the moving cloud is a demarcation between moonlight and darkness. In the rainy
Tasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Mano Bistam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Shapadandika. So this is an important example. I think we've all seen this. You look up in the sky and you see the moon sometimes racing across the sky. Have you seen? No? Sometimes I've seen. You look up in the sky and it looks like the moon is really moving. But of course, the moon is in its usual place. The clouds are moving. And because the clouds are moving, it seems as if the moon is moving. Similarly, the living entity has nothing to do with the movements of material nature. Material nature, his position is steady because he's a spiritual being. But because he's situated in the material world, it appears that he's being affected by so many material conditions. Or when he identifies with this material body, he thinks, oh, I'm going through this, I'm going through that, I've never gone through anything like this. But it has nothing to do with him. So in this way, we have to understand. This is due to false ego, the demarcation between spiritual and material existence. By false ego, I identify with this body, and then I think the things happening to this body are happening to me. And in fact, just as it seems that the movement of the clouds is making the moon move. Any questions so far on anything we've read? Yes. Yeah.
So the modes of material nature are the external energy of Krishna, and they don't have their own consciousness as internal energy does. So how is it that the modes of energy, the modes of nature move, whereas the conscious living entities are not in the material world?
How is it that the modes of nature are moving when the consciousness, because the conscious living entity has nothing to do with the movements of material nature.
Right, but why is the material nature moving at all? Because it's not actually conscious.
Mayadya kshena prakriti suyate satrahatra. By the Lord's direction, material nature is moving. Mayadya kshena.
So in a sense, it's being puppeted?
Hmm?
In a sense, it's being puppeted by Krishna and his energies?
Yeah. Or it's Jhana-rupa, it's working under the direction of Krishna, finally can be seen as personal. But in any case, it's by Krishna's desire. In the Vedas, it's said by the desire of the Supreme Lord, the sun is shining, the moon is shining, the wind is blowing, and so on. Everything is happening by Krishna's energy. But it's not happening to us. We think it's happening to us, but we have nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Yeah, was there? Loli Janat.
So when because we are still on the material plane, can we fully experience spiritual bliss? Because the living entity is always engrossed in the senses and the mind, and because we still identify ourselves as because we still identify ourselves in the material plane, can we fully experience spiritual bliss?
Not if we're still identifying on the spiritual plane. Of course, we can experience something. Anyone, if he hears the kirtan party, he may think, oh, so some spiritual bliss may come through, but it's hampered by material attachment, material misidentification. If we really want to experience spiritual bliss, we have to give up this false sense that I'm this body, and I'll be happy by something of this material world.
Even when you're still on, even when you're still in this material world,
even when we are
still in this material world.
Yeah, we have to give up. That's in the spiritual world. You don't have to give up false ego. There's no false ego to give up. That's to be done in the material world.
Can we experience full spiritual bliss?
Yes. In this life, you don't have to wait. Shall we read on?
This is due to the false ego, which is a demarcation between spiritual and material existence, just as the moving cloud is demarcation between moonlight and darkness. In the rainy season, when the clouds...
Hold on a second. We're not able to hear you well. How you test it? We're going back and forth between too much feedback and not enough volume.
Hare Krishna. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. This is due to the false ego, which is a demarcation between spiritual and material existence, just as the moving cloud is a demarcation between moonlight and darkness. In the rainy season, When the clouds appear for the first time, the peacocks dance with joy upon seeing them. The peacocks can be compared to persons who are very much harassed in the materialistic way of life. If they can find the association of a person engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord, they become enlightened and dance just like the peacocks. We have practical experience of this. Many of our students were dry and morose previous to coming to Krishna consciousness, but having come into contact with devotees, they are now dancing with jubilant peacocks. Plants and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground. Similarly, a person practicing austerities becomes dry, but after the austere performances are completed and he gets the result, he begins to enjoy life in sense gratification with family, society, love, home, and other paraphernalia. He becomes jolly, like newly grown plants and grass. Sometimes it is seen that cranes and ducks meander continually on the banks of the lakes and rivers, although the banks are filled with muddy garbage and thorny creepers. Similarly, persons who are householders without Krishna consciousness are constantly tarrying in material life in spite of all kinds of inconveniences. In family life or any life, one cannot be perfectly happy without being Krishna conscious. Srila Narottam Das Thakur prays that he will have the association of a person, either a householder or a man, in the renounced order of life, who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and is always crying the holy name of the Lord, Lord Chaitanya. For the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who is in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated. The barriers around an agricultural field sometimes break due to heavy torrents of rain. Similarly, the unauthorized atheistic propaganda in the age of Kali breaks the boundary of the Vedic injunctions. Thus, people gradually degenerate to godlessness. In the rainy season, the clouds, tossed by the wind, deliver water which is welcomed like nectar. When the Vedic followers, the Brahmanas, inspire rich men like kings and members of the wealthy mercantile community to give charity in performance of great sacrifices, the distribution of such wealth is also nectarian. The four sections of human society, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, are meant to live peacefully in a cooperative mood. This is possible when they are guided by expert Vedic Brahmanas who perform sacrifices and distribute wealth equally. Vrindavan forest improved from the rains and was replete with ripened dates, mangoes, blackberries, and other fruits. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although with his boyfriends and Lord Balaram, entered the forest to enjoy the new seasonal atmosphere. The cows, being fed by new grasses, became very healthy, and their milk bags were all very full. When Lord Krishna called them by name, they immediately came to him out of affection, and in their joyful condition, the milk flowed from their bags. Lord Krishna was very pleased when passing through the Vrindavan forest by the site of Govardhan Hill. On the bank of the Yamuna, he saw all the trees decorated with beehives pouring honey. There were many waterfalls on Govardhan Hill, and their flowing made a nice sound. Krishna heard them as he looked into the caves of the hill. When the rainy season was not ended completely, but was gradually turning to autumn, sometimes, especially when there was rainfall within the forest, Krishna and his companions would sit under a tree or within the caves of Govardhan Hill and enjoy eating the ripened fruits and talking with great pleasure. When Krishna and Balaram were in the forest, Mother Yashoda used to send them some fruits, sweetmeats, and rice mixed with yogurt. Krishna would take them, sit down on a slab of stone on the bank of the Yamuna, and called his friends to join him. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were eating, they watched the cows, calves, and bulls. The cows appeared to be a little tired from standing with their heavy milk bags. By sitting and chewing grass, they become happy, and Krishna was pleased to see them. He was proud to see the beauty of the forest due to the rainy season, which was nothing but the manifestation of his own energy. At such times, Krishna would praise nature's special activities during the rainy season. It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that the material energy or nature is not independent in its actions. Nature is acting under the superintendence of Krishna. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, which states that material nature, known as Durga, is acting as the shadow of Krishna. Whatever order is sent from Krishna, material nature obeys. Therefore, the natural beauty created by the rainy season was acted out according to the indications of Krishna, who thus felt very proud of material nature's beautiful activities.
Yes. So sometimes we do this as children. We sit inside and we watch a big storm outside and see how things are going on. Oh, so much rain or so much snow, whatever it may be. So Krishna was sitting in the caves and he was seeing all these uh, activities of material nature, especially in the rainy season. You get real super rain. And Krishna was appreciating, oh, so nice material. He was feeling proud because it's all his energy. Sweet. As a child, he's sitting and he's watching. Oh, so nice. But he's, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, my energy is working very nicely. Okay.
While Krishna and Balaram were enjoying the gifts of the rainy season in this way, the autumn season gradually arrived when all the water reservoirs became very clean and when pleasing and refreshing air blows everywhere. With the appearance of autumn, the sky was completely cleared of all clouds and it recovered its natural blue color. The blooming lotus flowers and the clear water in the forest appeared like persons who have fallen down from yoga practice but have again become beautiful by resuming their spiritual life. Everything becomes naturally beautiful with the appearance of the autumn season. Similarly, when a materialistic person takes to Krishna consciousness and spiritual life, he also becomes as clear as the sky and water in autumn.
Now, Prabhupada's mentioned this several times now, how a person in Maya looks dirty or depressed. But when one comes to Krishna consciousness, then prasanatma becomes joyful, becomes effulgent, bright-faced, as Prabhupada said. This is the sign of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said the first sign of a Krishna conscious person is that he's jolly. Anything else so far? Yeah, two sides. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is related to, as we read, false ego is demarcation between spiritual world and material world. So by false ego, like, is it because lack of understanding that Krishna is an enjoyer, we are part and parcel of it, and we are not this body, we are soul, or it is more than that? I just wanted to understand, like, false
False
ego and
ego
how to
means
avoid that.
to think that I'm something that I'm not. That's ahamkar. To think that I'm something I'm not. What am I? I'm a servant of Krishna. And whatever I'm doing, how is it being done? It's being done by Krishna's mercy. But under the influence of false ego, I think that I'm this body, and I think that everything is going on by my power. I forget that behind everything is Krishna. So that's called false ego, falsely identifying with the material body and forgetting my real identity as a spirit soul and part and parcel of Krishna. Is that okay? Question on this side.
Харе Кришна Махарадж. Я не говорю по-английски.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I don't speak English. Lots of Russian devotees also watching, so I think we can record the
Yeah.
Russian.
Я хотела спросить, Шрила Прабхупада здесь очень прославляет, как бы показывает негативную сторону материального существования и прославляет преданных в сознании Кришны, какие они счастливые.
So here we can see how Srila Prabhupada is glorifying the spiritual aspect, devotees, how they're happy, and he's also showing the negative side of materialistic people.
Я в Харе Кришна 30 лет, ну, чуть больше. И вот я вижу, что те люди, которые пришли вместе со мной, очень многие находятся в тяжелом положении. Не так уж сильно они счастливы. Вопрос, как не забрести туда, куда не надо, почему так происходит?
And I joined the movement 30 years ago, even more so. And I know many people who joined at the same time as I did, and I've been here for a long time, but they're not that jelly, they're not the jelly and happy as it mentioned here. So my question is how to not take a wrong turn and not to end up also in the similar position, but carry on being happy and jolly.
How to be happy in devotional service and not take a wrong turn.
Как быть счастливым?
Yeah. We should stay in good association and follow strictly the instructions of the spiritual master and Shastra.
Как научиться находиться долго в хорошем обществе и как научиться постоянно следовать, то есть как не уходить от этого.
So the next question may arise is how we can keep on staying in association of the devotees.
How to stay?
How we can stay in the association of the devotees and carry on with following the
Stay in
instructions.
association of devotees and
Continue following.
Yeah. How you stay in the association of devotees is that's just a logistics question, practical question. Go where they are and live where they live and so on. Come and either live in the temple or near the temple. How to associate means, be there. Is there more to the question than that? Okay. Yeah. Sometimes, for some material interest, we move far from devotees, and then often what happens is that we have trouble because then we don't have devotee association, and then so many problems come. Usually sometimes our spiritual life falls apart, and then our material life falls apart also, and then we have nothing. So better to stay with the devotees. And if our spiritual life is there, somehow the material part will go on.
И еще один вопрос уже из другой области.
And another question in another area.
Мы сейчас читаем о том, как Кришна восхищается как его энергия вот такую прекрасную осень создала. Гордиться, да.
Now we're hearing how Krishna was being proud of his energies creating such a beautiful autumn season.
И он сидит со своими друзьями, и он смотрит на своих коров, и он наслаждается их обществом. И часто говорится, что он не помнит о том, что он верховная личность Бога.
And he was surrounded by his friends. He was sitting among his friends, and also his cows were next to him, and he was enjoying. He was so happy. And we know that it's mentioned that in this kind of moments he forgets that he is the supreme personality of Godhead.
И говорится, что Кришна во Вриндаване, он мугдата, то есть он наивный. И это благодаря йога-майе.
And it is said that Krishna, being in Vrindavan, he has this quality of mugdata, being naive. Being naive, mugdata. Being naive. Yeah. Under the influence of this Maya also. Under the influence of Maya also. Yoga Maya.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Да, вот я хотела спросить, так если йога-майя так покрывает Бога, кто же главнее?
Yeah, as you mentioned, sometimes. So my question is, if her influence is so strong, then who is stronger, Yogamaya or Krishna?
No, Krishna's stronger. And Yogamaya acts appropriately to. Sometimes she brings about an atmosphere in which Krishna can forget. Of course, it's Krishna himself, but it's divided as Krishna and his energies. But the energies are not separated from Krishna, but for our understanding, just as the sun is not separate from the sunshine, but for our understanding, they're divided. This is the energy, this is Krishna. So even if the energy appears stronger, it's still Krishna. So Yogamaya works appropriately. Sometimes Krishna forgets, coward boys have rushed into the mouth of Agahasura. What am I going to do? And then sometimes he remembers that I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's what I do. So it's all adjusted for Krishna's enjoyment.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much. And I think Rukmini has a question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Earlier when we read about the residents of Vrindavan asking Krishna to see the spiritual world, and then it's just a replica of what's here.
Vrindavan, yeah.
So it's like a technical question, but I'm thinking in the season of autumn, you're seeing all these fruits and flowers, and I'm hearing blackberries. And I'm wondering if all the varieties of fruits and flowers that we see in the world is present in the spiritual world, or because here it's climatic, and in Balmi Vrindavan, they're not all present currently.
Well, as far as every variety, I don't know that every variety is wanted. Some useless fruits floating around sometimes. Or what is that, rambutan? Stinky, right? Smelly, mode of ignorance fruit. Let's see. As far as this one goes, I'm just looking to see which verse this is. Yeah, I think that may be Prabhupada's elaboration, because I don't see blackberries specifically mentioned here. Yes. Is that, are you, something about this question? Yeah. Where's the, yeah.
Maybe you know the origin of this story that I've heard, or maybe it's just a Prabhupada said story and it didn't happen. But I had heard that one devotee had asked Prabhupada for all the species that we see in the material world present in the spiritual world. And Prabhupada responded, said, yes, everything we see here and many more that we don't see here. And then the devotee kind of looked very bewildered. He said, except mosquitoes. There's no mosquitoes.
Prabhupada said, yeah. No mosquitoes.
You know the origin of that story?
No, I don't. I know there's another story where Prabhupada, one devotee, Pancha Dravida, now he's Janardhan Maharaj, was with Prabhupada in somewhere, and maybe Vrindavan or someplace, and he was getting bitten by mosquitoes, but he said that Prabhupada, they're not biting you because they know that you're a pure devotee. The mosquitoes are biting me, but they're not biting you because they know you're a pure devotee. Prabhupada said that may be, but in Calcutta they make no such distinction. Blackberries. I'm also considering in my mind whether this is a hearing error, whether Prabhupada said some kind of berries and devotees heard blackberries. I don't know. But I won't say that without evidence. So the evidence on the page is blackberries. Sometimes Prabhupada would substitute, like Narada says to Brahma that everything's known to you like the way a child holds a walnut in his hand. But actually, it's in the Bhagavatam, it's like an amalaki fruit, which is about the same size as a walnut. But who would know what an amalaki fruit is in the West? So Prabhupada said walnut. That's called dynamic equivalence in translation. There's slavish translation where you just translate exactly word for word, and sometimes it doesn't mean anything. You've translated each word exactly literally, but what it says is all nonsense. Like we have an expression in English, between the devil and the deep blue sea, which means between two equally hard choices. So if you translate that into Spanish, entre el diablo y el profundo azul mar. That's an exact literal translation, and it doesn't mean anything. If you say that to a Spanish speaker, he won't know what you're talking about. But entre la parada y la, let's see, entre la espada y la pared, between the sword and the wall. That's how you say it in Spanish, between the sword and the wall. So it's not literally word for word equivalent, but it's dynamic equivalence. The meaning gets across. I could give other examples, but I guess this is for hearing about Krishna, not for hearing about translation theory. So let us continue. Yeah. And we'll wait for the power to come back, I think. Well, okay. It's been funny today. Yeah, yours should go on. Let's see. Give it a try.
The autumn season.
No, not yet. Just as a note here, there may be devotees who haven't been here in the autumn season. There's 6 seasons in India. We may be used to 4 seasons in the West, but in India there are 6. So there's the rainy season, and then after the rainy season, then you get what? We get fall, right? Yeah, we get fall. We get summer, then we get rainy season, then we get autumn. So when the rainy season comes on, it's just like quite something. You know, it's all hot, and in the summer, the sun is beating down, and you see the clouds start moving in. And then, bam, you know, all of a sudden, the whole sky is filled with these dark rain clouds, and depending where you are, it can be just torrents and torrents of rain. And it goes on like that, on and on and on. And then the next season comes autumn, and then the clouds disperse. So that's what's described here.
The autumn season takes away the rolling of dark clouds in the sky as well as the polluted water. Filthy conditions on the ground also become cleansed. Similarly, a person who takes to Krishna consciousness immediately becomes cleansed of all dirty things, within and without. Krishna is therefore known as Hari. Hari means he who takes away. Krishna immediately takes away all unclean habits from anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness. The clouds of autumn are white, for they do not carry any water. Similarly, a retired man being freed from all responsibility of family affairs, namely maintaining the home, wife, and children, and taking completely to Krishna consciousness, becomes freed from all anxieties and looks as white as clouds in autumn.
This is Vanaprastha ashram. And one is not meant to remain in family life all one's days. The family men are meant to retire at the mature age and become free from family responsibilities, family maintenance and working and maintaining the home and wife and children. That should be over with. Then in the Vanaprastha ashram, he becomes freed from those things, and he can dedicate his time to bhajan, to hearing, to chanting, to rendering devotional service, and be freed from that. Family life is a kind of encumbrance. Brahmacharis have no anxieties. What about my wife? What about my home? The car payments? What about this? What about that? What about the children? You know, this, that. They don't worry about it. And in family life, one has all those responsibilities on one's head. One has to see to everything. And then, therefore, in mature time, one is meant to retire from family responsibilities, get free from that burden, and dedicate one's full energy, again, to Krishna consciousness. Yes.
Raj, can we ask a question related to that?
Hmm?
Can we ask a question related to that?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, so when a man decides to do that, then what actually happens to the wife? Does he like provision for her?
What
to
happens
Yeah.
in Vanaprastha life? What happens to the wife? Wife may come with him as a voluntary assistant. They may travel to holy places together, or they may live together in a place like Vrindavan, holy place, both doing bhajan. There's no sex. That's the main thing. In Vanaprastha life, brahmachari life, and sannyas life, there's no sex. Only in the grihastha ashram for getting children. So the wife and husband may stay together, or she may stay at home under the care of the grown children, and he may sometimes come and see how things are going on, and then sometimes go. Or even staying here, like our Kadamba Maharaj, he and his wife were staying here in Vrindavan. He was the temple president. But gradually he was seeing less and less of his wife. First they were staying separately, but he would come for lunch every day. Then after some time he stopped coming for lunch, but they would meet a little bit. Then after that it was passing notes. There would be some messages, any question, issue. Then after that, finished. So that's the theme of Vanaprastha ashram, gradually diminishing that contact and association. It's going to be finished anyway. And generally the men die before the women. That's statistically established for two reasons. One is that women generally live a little bit longer than men on average, and also because men tend to marry women who are a little younger than they are. So for those two reasons, and maybe the third reason is the men have all the anxieties. But in any case, it's likely that a woman at some point will find herself widowed. The husband will die and she'll still be around. It can go the other way, but it's more likely that way. So one way or another, the husband is going to be gone. So Vanaprastha life means preparing for that he may either die or he may take sannyas. So, and some arrangement should be there. Generally, according to the Vedic system, the mother lives with the grown sons, grown children.
Okay. And then the other side of my question is, what happens if the women in today's society, you have that the man's also working, but most women are also working.
Yes, such a stupid system.
I think so too. I think we've overburdened ourselves and that's where I'm leading to, because as women, then we take on the role of being the mother, the householder in terms of managing the house, then working, then service, and then your own sadhana. And it seems like we've complicated things extremely. And I'm wondering, where does one go to? At what point does one then have your own vanaprastha, if I may think so?
This shouldn't really be there. This is women's liberation. Now you're free to work like an ass as much as the men. It's rather stupid. There's one. No. There's a blogger. She used to write about this. She stopped writing about this topic, and she's written about other things. And the old texts seem to have disappeared for her. I guess she has reasons. But she was sort of a very free Israeli lady, and she was, as a young girl, she was liberated, feminist, loose as a goose, as they say, and totally into it. And at some point, being very intelligent, she realized this is lousy. I'm just being exploited. This makes no sense. And so she turned 180 degrees, 360, turned around. 180, yeah, I was right the first time. 180, 360 is a full turn. Turned 180 degrees, became what they call Orthodox Jewish, traditional. She realized that what she wanted was a husband and a home and children and all of that. So she became very chaste, very uh, self-restrained, and so on. And her friends all were appalled. First, you're like a traitor. You've given up the movement. You've given up the mission. You've caved in. You've surrendered, and all of that. And so there was some back and forth between them. And she said, do the math. She said, if you want to work, I'm not attacking you. It's up to you. But it doesn't work for me. Do the math. She said, you're working. This much of your money goes for transportation, which is the biggest cost these days. Transportation is the number one expense, not food, transportation. So this much for transportation, this much for eating out, because if you're in the workplace, you have to eat outside, you have to spend more money. This much for your work clothes, this much for taxes, this much for ongoing education and advancing in your career. So much, and at the end you have enough money left to hire people to take care of your kids. So I want to take care of my own kids. So she was very intelligent. That I'm just being exploited. And previously, if a woman had to work, it's like, what's wrong with your husband? And now everybody, it's seen as a great thing that I have my own career and da-da-da-da-da. But it hasn't made women's life better. Rather, more anxieties, more trouble.
Thanks for that, man. The clouds of autumn are white, for they do not carry any water. Similarly, a retired man, being freed from all responsibility of family affairs, namely maintaining the home, wife, and children, are taken completely to Krishna consciousness, becomes freed from all anxiety, and looks as white as clouds in the autumn. Sometimes in autumn, the falls come down from the top of the hill to supply clean water, and sometimes they stop. Similarly, sometimes great saintly persons distribute clear knowledge, and sometimes they are silent. The small ponds which were filled with water because of the rainy season gradually dry up in autumn. As for the small aquatics living in the reservoirs, they cannot understand that their ponds are diminishing day by day, just as the materially engrossed persons cannot understand that their duration of life is being reduced day by day. Such persons are engaged in maintaining cows, property, children, wife, society, and friendship. Due to the reduced water and scorching heat from the sun in the autumn season, the small creatures living in small reservoirs of water are very much disturbed. They are exactly like uncontrolled persons who are always unhappy from being unable to enjoy life or maintain their family members. The muddy earth gradually dries up, and newly grown fresh vegetation begins to wither. Similarly, for one who has taken to Krishna consciousness, Desire for family enjoyment gradually dries up.
We were hearing that earlier. What is that? Suttamita Ramana Samaje? That Vidyapati is singing that the happiness of family life is like a little drop of water in the desert. In the desert, we need so much water. And if someone says, here's a drop, what does that do for me? So Vidyapati sings that the happiness from wife and home and children and so on, there's a little happiness, but it's like a drop in the desert. So gradually, and it's supposed to be all this enjoyment, but it's actually so much suffering. So for the mature person, especially the Krishna conscious person, he's hearing from Shastra, he's associating with devotees, he's worshiping the deity. So he gets a higher taste of Krishna consciousness and a higher understanding. Therefore, janayati ashu vairagyam jnanam Jayadvaita. He develops detachment. He thinks, what is this family happiness? It's, this much happiness. And for what? The real happiness is brahmasokyam to anantam. I want unlimited happiness. And that's on the spiritual platform. The material energy wants to persuade us, here, get married, you'll have unlimited happiness. So gradually, the desire for family enjoyment diminishes for the Krishna conscious person, gradually or quickly. And then the vanaprastha ashram is there. Yes.
Marge, that process of detachment is for all of us at the end of life need to come to. But following up from Shubhamai's question, it seems like the vanaprastha ashram for a woman, she's still entangled with family. And how does that detachment come about?
Because she's not, the Krishna conscious woman in maturity is also expected to develop transcendental understanding. So she needs to be maintained. So the family is maintaining, sons are maintaining, and so on. But she's not such, but she knows that my real happiness is in Krishna. So you'll find even today in India that there are elderly ladies, they're living with their sons and family, but their business is bhajan. Their business is bhajan. They're worshiping their deities, they're chanting Hare Krishna, right? You have experience, huh? Tell. Can you tell something? Huh? Hold on, we're giving you a microphone. Switch.
My grandmother, my father's mother, Arianachi, her name, Arianachi. Basically from Sri Vaishnava. She used to recite the slokas.
She used to?
Recite the slokas.
Recite slokas.
Slokas from Nalayara Divya Prabandham. And always chanting Om Namo Narayana. And she used to chant our name, our Mahamantra into reverse. Like we say Hare Krishna, she said Hare Rama first.
Yes.
Like this, I experienced many times. And whenever I visit to, my father take to Tirupati or some other temple, I'll bring the Mahaprasadam to her. She won't come, she's very old. She's 98 years.
Sure.
So whenever I give in my childhood, I give the Mahaprasadam. She hold the Mahaprasadam in the hand. She write many slokam, which I don't understand in my childhood. Now we are slowing Mahaprasadi Govinde.
she remembered the Lord. This is Mahaprasadam from Tirupati, Balaji. She recite many slokas. Then she throw away the prasadam. The hand never touched the mouth. She throw the it will like basketball. Then I will kidding her. Why do you do like this? Just eat like this. Why you are telling so many things? In my childhood, I used to say like this. After coming to Krishna consciousness only, I realized this. They are having they have maintained that Krishna consciousness in the way.
Yeah. So this is their life. That they're staying at home. They have no anxiety. How will I be? Who will feed me? Who will give me a place to stay? Everything is there, but their business is not. How do I enjoy? What will I enjoy? Let me be engaged in the service of Krishna.
But what happens, Marge, is that the grandparents become the nannies. And the nannies. And they just
That's also there.
They just, practically, like, I haven't seen an example specifically. I haven't seen an example where this actually happens.
It actually happens. It may be mixed. The elderly ladies, naturally, they're involved with the grandchildren. That's fairly, what would you say, normal. And they may be enlisted also to help. But they're not like full-time nannies. Their main business is bhajan. And also it depends on the grandmother. Some are inclined, that just their life is their grandchildren, according to their level of realization. Some want to be always involved with their children and grandchildren, and some don't want to hear about the grandchildren. They want to be engaged in, devotional activities, or else there's every shade between. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I want to add my experience in this regard. My mother, she stays with us, and she is also involved in my son. But she involved, but she always keep on telling him about the stories, Krishna stories, telling about Prabhupada. So she's her whole time either in deity worship or chanting or my son caring. But all three things she do with devotional
preaching.
So my son knows a lot of story, lot of philosophy, and at night he wants to sleep with her only because she always tells some story.
Krishna Katha, yeah. That's a very important function. The elderly ladies are staying at home with their sons, and they're keeping the family on track. The son is busy with his business, his capital, increasing his capital and all of that. And the mother is more focused on spiritual activities. And so that helps keep the family on the spiritual course. Prabhupada cites the example of one family, Singhania family, very rich family in Kanpur, where they have their own temple, that many such families do. And the grandmother established the rule that every day all the sons and grandsons have to attend the Mangal Arti, I think it was, at the temple. And if someone missed, then they would be fined. The pujari would, give a bill that you. Prabhupada said similarly we should institute this system. Anyone who doesn't come to Mangal Arti has to distribute one Krishna book. Okay, we've reached our time. And who's leading Kirtan today? The engagement is open. Okay. You're on. Our rule is only one tune. Whichever tune you like, but only one. And basically only Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur,
Jai Om Vishnupad Padman Supari Praj Pacharya
Ashtotar Shri Shmad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Shamiraj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Ki Jai. Gangamai Ki Jai. Jamanamai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Holy Lord. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Nice kirtan.